All right, well, welcome back to Replace Your Income with Kevin and
Steve.
Hey, man, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing today?
Fantastic, and we are still in the new studio, and it looks awesome.
Love it.
Steve, you know what I love is we've got these lights on the ceiling, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, there's 7 lights, and we can change each one individually to one of 26 million colors.
It's pretty cool.
It's like Willy Wonka's chocolate factory in here now. It's that magical. I want to also let the audience know that today, this is not actually Steve and I talking. This is all AI generated.
I'm a CGI figure.
By the way, I got to say this too, because this is kind of funny. So we had a webinar recently, and you and I were doing the webinar, and I introduced you, and there was somebody on the webinar chat who said, Steve Earle, he's an awesome musician. And my response to that person was, because he was thinking about like the Steve Earle, like if you Google Steve Earle, you find this other musician person. And I think he goes by Stephen Earle, not Steve Earle.
No, he goes by Steve
Does
Earle.
he go?
It just spells Earle with an E on the end.
Is he like a folk singer or what is he?
He's a country singer.
Okay,
Yeah.
country singer. So I said, well, our Steve Earle is a great musician too. He plays a mean tuba.
Which would be not true. Maybe you
But
need to correct
I
that.
kind of would like to get you a tuba and just see how it goes. Can we try it?
Okay, let's do it. Let's give it a shot. Next
Man.
podcast, I'll be ready to go.
Well, we are excited to be back with you guys, and so excited to be with you. We love doing this podcast, and today's kind of an interesting topic because this is one. So, okay, look, we love to play in the playground of evergreen principles, right? That's where we love to play. And so and the reason we call them, evergreen just means like it's always applicable, right? And if it's a true principle, not just knowledge, principles are transcendent. And we talk about this in our book, Micro Wins to Millions, just kind of right at the beginning, that the principles in the book, regardless of what the market's giving us or doing, or regardless of what any, whatever news outlet or some popular guru or author is saying about what is a good thing to do in the real estate market, if you don't play in the playground of principles, you can become outdated really quickly, right? Now, what's interesting is we've established this company on principles, right? It's always been about doing the right kind of real estate the right way for people that normally wouldn't be able to do it without maybe having a whole team that goes to work. But then there's knowledge that accompanies those principles, and knowledge can kind of change with the times, right? The example I use in the book is, if you look at the principle of medical professionals, the principle is to do no harm or to heal a person, right? To make them better. But then the knowledge has changed over the years of how one goes about doing that, right? And so like bloodletting used to be a thing, right? The medical professionals would bloodlet and use leeches. Now, I don't think if you go to the hospital today, I don't think, all right, let's cut you open and pour this and let's throw some, I don't know, maybe they still use leeches. But the idea is that the principle was to do a good thing, but the knowledge about how we do that good thing has shifted. Now, when we look at real estate, Steve, we have built this entire company and the type of real estate we do on principles. But then there's certain aspects of knowledge in real estate that can change. Now, one of the principles of real estate, and this is what we want to talk about here today, is cash flow, right? We love to say that cash flow is king, cash flow is important, but there is a little bit of knowledge that we want to talk about today, that the principle of cash flow, meaning increasing cash in your life through real estate over time, that is the principle. But cash flow is kind of the idea that, hopefully I buy a property today and my income from that property, just from rent, exceeds my expenses. So if we were to assume that cash flow is king and that you cannot buy a property unless it's cash flow positive, then would we go and buy a negative cash flow property? And today we are going to talk about the idea of negative cash flow, and does it still lend itself to the principle of real estate making money over time? Does it still make sense to buy a property with negative cash flow? And this is something that we've been thinking about and experiencing, have personal experience with, and we wanted to come in. This is replace your income, right? And so the idea is you own enough properties and then those properties replace your income. Well, that is still the journey that we are on, but as part of the pathway to get from here to there, would it be okay to accept a negative cash flow property if the principal is own enough real estate that replaces your income and changes your life. So that's what we want to talk about today, Steve.
Well, and let me just clarify a little bit for you. When you're saying the word negative cash flow, right? What you're really talking about is net monthly cash flow.
That's exactly right.
Because the principle is your real estate needs to create positive cash flow.
Yes.
And even more clarity would be positive cash flow over time.
But the positive financial increase, I think, is really what the principle is too, right?
Yeah, exactly. And the other principle that we talk about is not looking at a property at a snapshot in time. Because the real estate that we buy, like even when cash flow is really, really good, like, even if, at $400 a month, $500 a month, for many people, that's not like super exciting.
Right.
You put down $85,000 in total out of pocket to get $500 a month.
It's not change your life tomorrow money, right?
Not at all.
Yeah.
But it's good stepping stones.
That's right.
Right. And so it's the overall picture of what's this property going to do for me over the next 5 to 10 years. That's the principle. And so in looking at a property holistically, taking into account, okay, so even like, I'll give you an example. If you're looking at a property analysis and the day one cash flow is some crazy number, let's say, $600 a month, positive net monthly cash flow
right.
after all your expenses. But let's say that this home was built in 1954. And, it had a remodeling job done to it, but, it was done by the owner who was kind of a do-it-yourself person. And, let's say that, this is a home that is built in the Midwest in an area where there's a ton of moisture and a ton of vegetation and different things like that, right? That $600 a month snapshot cash flow could very easily become a negative cash flow.
Right.
And I'm not even going to say that that's necessarily a bad property, even though we don't buy older properties and we have some very, stringent criteria to avoid expenses. So you have to look at the whole picture. So if you're looking at that home and it has a in the moment next month after buying it $600 a month cash flow, is that a better deal than a brand new construction in a new neighborhood in a vetted market that has $50 a month cash flow? Which opportunity is better, Kev?
Yeah,
right. So that's the question: is on an overall basis, what's the opportunity? Now, if all you were doing is looking at just the net monthly cash flow and you weren't taking into account the other revenue sources like principal paydown, they both have principal paydown. They're both going to get that equally. The tax opportunities, they're both going to get those equally. The appreciation, well, one might do a little better than the other, right? Depending on the market that it's in, depending on the age of the home, there's going to be some differences there. So you have to take that into account. So when you take a look at the overall picture of what it is that you're buying, you have to make sure that the property that you're buying, again, it's one of the things that principle-based real estate investing does for you. Meaning the principles are you're buying in a particular in a certain type of market that meets certain qualifications. You're buying a certain type of property that meets certain qualifications, and that you're buying it from that holistic standpoint. All of a sudden, what might be apparently really attractive because of that snapshot in time, the net monthly cash flow, you might make a decision that's not as good of a decision as you could have made if you're looking at something in whole, as a whole.
Exactly. Do you remember this? I had this thought come to me as you were describing this. Do you remember there was a really popular YouTube video, and it was like this guy with like some khakis on, and he had like a button-up shirt and some glasses, and he had his flip phone like attached to his belt, and he did this thing where he was demonstrating how to find attractive women, and he put them on like a curve of like hot and crazy. Do you remember this at all?
I don't think I ever saw it.
Okay, you guys, you have to go watch it. It's so funny. But here was why that came to me, is because he has like this scale of, are they a 1 to 10 on like the attractive scale and a 1 to 10 on the crazy scale, right? And he basically said, if you're like a 10 on the attractive scale and a 10 on the crazy scale, you got to stay far away, right? But here's the point. If you were to view real estate in a similar way, right? Let's say that the attractiveness of real estate is only based on net monthly cash flow. Okay, that's all you're looking at. You're not taking into account the crazy. You're not taking into account the maintenance. You're not taking into account the location. You're not taking into account the year of the home, the amount of repairs. If you just go, I am judging it on one thing and one thing alone. I am judging it on this scale. The attractiveness of a property is determined solely by positive monthly cash flow beginning in year one. That's kind of how it used to be with the 1% rule, right?
Well, and here's the thing is like we've been kind of conditioned to look at it, and we're no exception. Like you and I we're no different than our own clients.
We are coming on board with, like, we've been, just to comment on that, and then I want you to finish your thought. We have realized, Steve, even in our analysis of properties, I want you know what story I'm thinking of here. I want you to share this story. But we, even in doing this daily, right, looking at properties on the daily, helping our clients invest in real estate daily, investing in real estate ourselves, we've even been conditioned, even though we try to kind of be like the purveyors of a mentality that is different than the majority of the market, we've even been conditioned to be like, well, what's the cash flow? Like in reality, dude, the door's closed to the studio, so I can say this. We know we have some of the best people on the planet that work at this company, but you and I have also had to have conversations with even our team to help them, because as we've been going through this process, you and I've had to reason through and go, wait a second, is positive net monthly cash flow out the gate the most important thing? Because we sort of built this podcast even on that general concept. Like, that we've sold that idea to real estate investors for many, many years. And as you and I've gone through the process of going like, whoa, maybe that isn't the only most important thing. Because if we were to say that that's the only thing that matters, then we would have to make the assumption that now's not a good time to invest in real estate. But you and I last podcast just talked about how amazing the opportunity is to invest in real estate right now. So we had to get on board. We had to help our team understand that we've got to look at real estate more holistically and through a wider picture. And we continue to help one another, because you and I have come to this realization. We've talked to our coaches and our team, help them come to the realization, but it doesn't mean that us or them are going to stay in that lane, which brings me to the story that you and I were talking about before we started to record on a property that you were evaluating to go buy. Like, tell everybody what happened there.
Yeah. I'll share that story. And to your point is that the thought process, the evolution of, like, the principle of replace your income, that is still intact.
Totally
intact. That is the absolute goal. It's a matter of understanding what that actually means.
Yes.
Replace your income isn't talking exclusively about net monthly cash flow. Right? Like, that is 20% of the equation.
Yes.
Is what that is.
Totally.
I was looking at a property. I was in the market to buy in Oklahoma City earlier this year. And the team, and just so you know, I go through the exact same process. I have a coach.
Yeah.
Who works here.
Right.
And every property that I buy, that I purchase, I get it the same way. I start working with one of our agents in whatever market that I'm buying in, and they begin sending in potential opportunities, and then the acquisition team, they vet the property. If it passes the acquisition test, it gets sent back. They put together the PA, and then it gets sent to me. And it also gets sent to
PA stands for property analysis. Yeah.
And that gets sent to my coach as well. So I got this property analysis, and Adam, who's my coach, he piped up. He sent an email. He's like, Steve, this looks like a fantastic property. And I looked at it, and I just did a really quick glance at it, and my eye immediately went to the line item that says net monthly cash flow. And I was like, and it was kind of low. It was like, I don't know, it was under $100 a month.
Yeah.
But it was a brand new property, 4-bed, 3-car garage.
Wow.
Under $300,000. Like, it was an awesome, beautiful property.
Yeah.
Like, it looked really good. But immediately I looked at that cash flow, kind of glanced at some of the other numbers, and I responded back on the email because I was busy doing something. I was like, hey, the cash flow on this one's kind of low. I don't know. Let me think about it. And Adam, my coach, since we work in the same office, he didn't respond with an email. He walked over to my office and like kind of pounded on the door. And he's like, Steve, hey, can I sit down for just a second? I'm like, yeah, come on in. He sits down and he's like, look, do I need to remind you that that's not the number that we're focused on? Take a look at the average cash flow over the 10-year period of time. It's actually $475. Number one. And I was like, oh yeah. Oh my goodness. Like I'm so dumb. And then on top of that, he's like, and take a look at the month, the day one combined cash on cash, net cash flow.
Yeah.
And it was in the 400s.
Yeah.
And I was like, like I can't believe that I fell into the same trap. Right.
Yes.
And so in looking, and I was like, Adam, this is why I got a coach.
Yep.
Thank you for just reminding me of that. I know better. I'm actually really quite embarrassed that I kind of dismissed this so quickly. And then I jumped in and I looked at the numbers much more closely, much more carefully. And of course, I made an offer on the home and we ended up getting the home. And now I own it. It's part of my portfolio.
See, this is the value of having a coach though, right? Like I think about it, I love to golf, right? I don't do it nearly as much as I should, but I love to golf. And if I have a golf lesson, right, I've learned the mechanics of a swing, okay? And I've practiced many of them. But if I'm not hitting the ball right, all it takes is a coach who knows what I know, but is looking at it with a slightly different lens because they're not the one swinging the club at that precise moment. And they're saying, hey, you're lifting your head up too soon, right? Or from a basketball standpoint, right? I always think, my basketball coach taught us FIFI, right? Feet, eyes, elbow, flick every time, right? And you put your elbow in, and that makes a big difference on your jump shot if the elbow's in. And
unless you're Kevin Durant.
Yeah, well, yes, there are some of those guys in the NBA. Yeah, that's true. For somebody like me. And so, if I'm missing on my shot, a coach might look and be like, dude, just get your elbow in. Oh, okay. And that can happen in real estate as well. It's like, I know all these things about real estate. I know I need to look at the bigger picture, but sometimes I get caught up or I get in my own way and I'm like, oh man, I don't know. I mean, the cash flow's kind of low, bro. And then somebody may just say, whoa. That's not the reason you're buying this property. And that brings us to this discussion, Steve. Would it make sense from the replace your income mentality, from the idea of stacking micro wins in order to make millions, from the concept of Moneyball real estate, would it make sense to buy a property if the interest rate is a little high, the rent's a little low, and you're going negative cash flow a little bit every month? Would it still make sense, maybe at least in the first 1 or 2 years, would it still make sense to buy that property, to invest in a real estate single if you're negative cash flow right out the gate?
Yeah, if it's the right property, in the right market, in the right neighborhood, with the right strategy, it absolutely can make sense. Now, having said that, like our strategy has been, even in this market, pretty successful. Yeah. We're not helping our clients buy negative cash flow properties. Right. They're still positive, but I like that you're going to the extreme.
Yeah. I think it's important that we do.
Because 100%, Kev, like when you think about it, it's like if I had to come out of pocket a little bit, it's kind of like, I think the other day you kind of compared it to like contributing to a 401k.
Yes.
Like people take money out of their paycheck.
Yes.
They go negative cash flow on their paycheck to contribute to a 401k every single month of their lives.
Yeah. We earn money. And then we pull money out of that money, right? And then we go put it somewhere where it's not going to make us money tomorrow. That's exactly what it is, right? So we say, okay, let's just use round numbers. Let's say I get a $4,000 check and I'm going to take 10% of it and contribute it to my 401k. So I take $400 out of my pocket and I put it in a 401k. When am I going to see that $400?
35 years.
If I'm lucky and if the market goes up, right? I'm not seeing it. But so we're literally willing as Americans to spend money for our retirement, But then there's real estate investors that are not willing to contribute to a property that will give them real spendable dollars much sooner, that will give them tax benefits that they can realize this year, that will give them appreciation that's likely going to outpace the S&P 500, that will give them a hedge against inflation, that will give them a hedge against so much of the other stuff that's going on, that will give, and just from a 401k standpoint, because we write about this in the book, like I love thinking of it like this. We're so willing to put money into a 401k or an IRA, right? Why? Because our employer is going to contribute some money back. And so I want my 401k match because I'm getting more money, more bang for my buck. So I'm willing to take money out of my life and put it somewhere where I cannot realize the benefit of it because somebody else is going to give me a little bit more and do a match. What about real estate? Okay, look, think of it just in these terms. If I were to invest money in my property, meaning, yes, there's an investment initially, there's the initial investment, but let's say I'm negative cash flow, okay? Let's say that I have to put in $50, $100, $150 a month with none of our properties, or that's not been the case on any of the properties we've been helping our clients transact recently, but let's just assume, right? Let's assume I have to contribute $200 a month in order to keep my property above water so that I can realize the long-term benefits. Well, why would I do that instead of a 401k if I'm not getting a match? Well, what if you are getting a match? This is what people forget about, okay? If I were to spend or invest $200 a month in a negative cash flow property, am I getting a contribution back? Oh, heck yeah. Why? Because the tenant is paying down my principal for me, and they're paying my insurance, and they're paying my taxes. They're paying my escrows, right? They're paying me my entire principal, interest, tax, and insurance payment, and they are paying down my mortgage. We don't ever look at it that way, but that is one of the benefits of real estate. Our tenants are contributing to our retirement every single month they pay rent. So if I'm
they're basically matching it or whatever it is, right?
Matching or better. And you can look at the property analysis and look at the actual real dollar benefit on a monthly basis in year 1, 2, 3, all the way through 10 of what the principal pay down and the tax benefit is going to, plus the cash flow is going to look like. So we're totally fine with pulling money out of our lives to give it to an investment advisor with the hope of one day it pays off for us, and maybe the hope that we're going to get a 401k match. But what, we draw the line at real estate? Oh, no, I would not go negative cash flow. Because why? Only because we've been conditioned. But if we were to reframe it, which is all we ever talk about here, right? It's always about how do we look at the world through a different set of lenses. If we reframe it and we go, I'm willing to invest in my property on a monthly basis, and I'm getting a match or better from the tenant, and now I'm going to realize the profits and the money on that home much sooner than I would on a 401k, and it's going to give me more benefits along the way. Like, why wouldn't we do that? That's what we're talking about with negative cash flow, but we call it negative cash flow, so we immediately think it's negative. Well, what if we reframed it altogether? What if it's not negative cash flow? What if it's just additional contribution real estate?
Well, take it a step further and reframe the conversation of depreciation and the tax benefit. It's like the government is contributing to your retirement as well.
Totally.
Right?
I hadn't even thought. Yes, that's totally true.
And I mean, I really like where you're taking this and reframing the view of this. And this is, if this resonates with somebody listening in terms of like this kind of framework, the market is contributing the greatest amount to your matching retirement, program in a way that is unbelievable, right?
Right.
So I mean, you could take and really extrapolate
you totally can.
And make this a really fun conversation in terms of like really what's happening here.
I love the idea of like the government's contributing to your retirement as well, right? Like that's crazy. And you could say that with the 401k, okay, maybe the market goes up. That's kind of the same. Maybe, you get some tax benefits. I mean, but here's the thing. You're only delaying tax benefits. Like the way it works with the 401k is like you're pushing the tax bill down the road, right? That's largely what you're doing. I mean, you're getting a little bit of a deduction now, but you're pushing the tax bill down the road. But with real estate, it's like these are real tax benefits today. And then when you add the 1031 exchange idea of being able to roll these profits forward and be able to grow your portfolio without having to pay a capital gains tax, in addition to the depreciation and what you're doing from a tax standpoint there. I mean, this is why this idea of would it make sense to buy a property, even if it's quote unquote negative cash flow. Why would it make sense? This is why. Because of, and this is what, we talk about this in the book. We've talked about it on the podcast. But just to remind everybody, when you invest money in traditional retirement, there's really one way to make money. The market has to go up. I guess if you've got the employer contribution or whatever, like maybe you consider
and some
that.
companies pay like a dividend and that kind
Sure.
of thing, but not all of them do.
But when you look at real estate, like we actually say, we used to say there's 4 major profit centers in real estate, but as we were really writing the book and we started to extrapolate out more of these concepts, we're like, wait a second, there's actually like 7 financial benefits to real estate, right? Cash flow is only 1. So if I'm negative cash flow, I still have 6 additional benefits to my real estate. Where else can you go do that, right? You think, so cash flow is 1, appreciation, that's where the market gets to play a little bit of a role, right? And this is not, I think that we have an entire chapter in the book dedicated to the idea of leverage, but leverage is a real financial benefit. It's not just, I get to go get a mortgage. It is the idea that if you want to go and buy a $250,000 asset, you only need to contribute $50,000 to $75,000, maybe $85,000 if you look at closing costs and fees, yada, yada, yada. But if you just look at buying that investment, you're putting money out of pocket that's significantly less than buying the whole investment itself. That is a real financial benefit because it means you keep more dollars, which can be invested in other places. So leverage is a profit center, but a lot of people don't look at leverage as a profit center. But if we assume that a profit center just means it reflects financial gain in your life, there's at least 7 ways that real estate reflects financial gain and security in your life. Leverage is one of those, and so it ought to be considered. And then tenants paying off the property. That's what we were just talking about. They contribute to your retirement by paying off your property. Every month that they contribute rent, they're paying off your property. That should be considered
and we call
a profit
that
center.
Principal paydown.
Principal paydown, yep. And then an inflation hedge, right? If you look at the way inflation works, when everything costs more, so does real estate. So if I own real estate, as everything begins to cost more, then I'm on the right side of that equation because everything's going up, including my real estate. And then the tax benefits like we've talked about. And then this last one is just something in the book we call infinite returns. And here's the idea of infinite returns. This is so cool. If I contribute $75,000 to own a property, and that property appreciates, generates cash flow, or maybe I'm making additional contribution. It's not positive cash flow in the first couple of years, but I'm getting tax benefits and I'm getting appreciation, and I'm getting everything. If in a few years from now, I can go and refinance my money out of the property and go buy a second property, how much money is actually sitting in property number 1? Nothing. But it's still generating profit for me in multiple ways. That's infinite returns because now your money is no longer sitting in the vehicle that you invested in the first place, but that vehicle is still producing financial gains for you. That's infinite returns because you're making money and you don't even have any more money sitting in that money machine. That's crazy. And then your real estate portfolio just explodes. If you buy one property and a couple years down the road or 5 years down the road, you can sell one and go buy 2. It's like you got all your capital back, or it's sitting in the, you could sell a property. Like, let's say you buy property number 1. You could even do this. You buy property number 1, you sell it. You take all your money back if that's what you want to do, and then you just take the remainder and you go start a new real estate portfolio, right? Now, you had capital to start a portfolio that you didn't even have to come up with because your property manufactured it for you because you got to use leverage, and now that money is just going and producing forever. Like, you don't even have money sitting in your real estate portfolio, but it's still generating returns. Like, what else can do that? When it comes to traditional retirement, when you take your money out of the market, the money no longer works in the market, right? That's just how it works. And so would we think of this idea of negative cash flow? We want to reframe it as positive contribution. I'm making additional positive contributions to my income replacement plan. That's what we're talking about. Imagine how that would feel, you guys, if you're sitting there going, well, I don't know if I want to get this property because, I'm negative cash flow. I'm not going to make a lot of money. and you're neglecting all of the other things that make that property and that investment massively profitable for you in the long run as you go through the process of replacing your income, again, we talk about opportunity cost. You are missing out. So I want everybody to reframe the idea of negative cash flow. Now, look, that being said, Steve, it's not like we're going out there trying to find properties where people are going $200 negative a month. We are still looking for positively cash flowing properties and finding them every single day. But in the event that you were to look at a property that was potentially negative cash flow, maybe don't look at it as negative cash flow. If you understand the holistic approach to real estate and the income replacement path and why you want to go and buy real estate singles, it may just be additional positive contribution to your income replacement plan.
I love the way that you reframed that from negative cash flow to positive contribution to your retirement plan.
That's exactly right. So that's what we wanted to talk about today. Steve, any last words before we wrap this thing up?
Man, you left me speechless.
I do that, but it's mostly because I talk so much that people fall asleep and then they don't have the ability to talk because they're sleeping.
It's a brilliant conversation. We've had that conversation a few times, and I love the way that you articulated it, particularly in this particular podcast.
Awesome.
We have these types of conversations on a regular basis,
do,
but
yeah.
I don't think that you've articulated it quite as clearly and masterfully as you did here today. So thanks for doing that.
Well, cool. Well, thanks everybody for joining us on the Replace Your Income podcast. We'll be excited to be with you again real soon. So stay tuned. We got this new studio, man. We are going to keep pumping these hits out. Right, Steve?
We're on it.
See you, everybody.
Take care.